Hello and welcome to the Board Game Nexus. I'm your host, Anthony.
And I'm Francis.
And today, we're going to share with you our top 5 Overland Adventure RPG board games from our collection.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, would you like to explain to the people at home what is an
What
Overland
is it?
Adventure RPG board game?
Aside from being a mouthful, what exactly is an Overland RPG? And this is our definition, right?
Yeah.
And you may not share the same definition, but this is how we define and categorize our games, right? Mm-hmm. So what I would say is, and the best way to sort of describe this is if you take a dungeon crawler, for example, we'll say Gloomhaven. Even though Gloomhaven does have an Overland map, per se, it is more of a campaign narrative map, where the games that we're going to be covering today, the board is a map, right?
Right.
There is, in most cases, no dungeon-based or location-based combat on the tactical sense, right? So the way I sort of differentiate the two is you've got games like Gloomhaven, you've got games like Descent, where you are a party of adventurers or one adventurer in a dungeon, in a swamp, in any location, but it's zoomed in. It's micro, what you would call it. That combat is back and forth. There's multiple units. You're looking tactically. You're using the terrain and cover. You're using line of sight. You're rolling dice. Like all of that. That's what I would call a dungeon crawler. An Overland Adventure game is more macro. So zoom out. Now we're looking at
literally, because you're looking at a map.
Looking at a map, and you've got your character on the map. You've got locations around the map, and it's more about traveling and exploration with some combat sprinkled in. Maybe a lot of combat sprinkled in, but it's typically you versus a monster or a handful of monsters, but they're at all different locations on the map.
And it's kind of like, okay, deal with the monster. All right, let's move on.
Right, yeah.
Right,
Once you deal with the monster, now you got to figure out where else do I want to move. It's not like, all right, let me get to the end of this dungeon room to explore the next room, to find the boss, to end that scenario. The scenario is more, again, it's more macro, more global. It's a bigger arcing story that you're going to have to explore the whole map and do a lot of adventuring in order to achieve your goals. So that, in a nutshell, is what I'd call Overland. And it'll make more sense. It'll make more sense as we sort of go through our list and show you the games, to share with you what we like about those games and what those games are all about.
Cool.
All right?
All right.
So, without further ado, let's take us to game number 5. All right, game number 5. So we're starting off with a game by the name of Fallout.
Yes.
So Fallout.
Can we start with number 5?
Yeah,
well, your number 5.
We're going to count it down to number 1, right? So number 5 being my least favorite of the 5.
Yes.
But it still made the top 5 in our collection. And I'll be honest with you. So what is Fallout? Fallout is obviously it's a game named after the video game franchise by Bethesda. Where it is a post-apocalyptic, you come out of a bunker, you've got nothing, you're basically allying with different factions, you're traveling the barren landscape that's all radiated.
Radioactive.
Yeah. Fighting sorts of mutants and upgrading your skills and abilities, right? Yeah. So the board game basically does just that, right, in board game form. It is, and we'll throw a bunch of images up so you can see what we're talking about here. So you've got the Overland tiles you're going to put out. It's scenario based. You're going to set up the board. Everything's hidden for the most part, except for the first land tile you start on. It's very macro. You're way zoomed out. So you are traversing the land as your character. You're upgrading your abilities. You're going on adventures. You're visiting locations. You're doing quests. You're doing missions. You're doing all sorts of combat with these monsters that are constantly spawning.
Yeah.
They're applying a lot of pressure. They're moving towards you on the map. And a lot of these games have that. They have monsters spawning. They'll be moving towards you. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge role-playing element and character upgrade element where it uses the special acronym that stands like strength, perception, endurance, intelligence, agility maybe?
I think it is agility.
And luck.
Yeah.
Right? So those are your abilities. You're going to upgrade them. You're going to get skills. You're going to get equipment. You're going to get all sorts of stuff while you're moving towards a progressive end of your scenario.
Right, exactly. And what's cool about it is that, like, with this, I particularly really enjoy, like, I like this upgrade. Like, I don't know what you would call it, tableau, I guess. Because as you get items, it's like if you have E, then you can use this item or you get some kind of special passive
Really get, like,
bonus or
re-rolls
something.
and stuff,
Or
yeah.
like if you don't have A, then you get this particular ability or something. So it's kind of neat like how that works. So it kind of mitigates some of the luck as you level up, but it doesn't feel like just because you have a bunch of cards or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool. Like as you go, you really feel like you're in the environment. And I think another thing, just in case folks don't know, I don't want to assume, this is cooperative as well.
Well, it is, but I didn't get there yet. Yeah, so there's the caveat here. So the original base game, and I'll be full.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We did not love it. At least I know I didn't love it. It's competitive, and there are two factions in the game, and you are allying with either one of them, and whoever pushes one of those faction charts up to the top first wins, right? It can go on and on and on, and it could just be, it's a weird ending, and I didn't really like it that way. When they came out with the new California expansion, not only did it add some new location tiles, some new quest tiles, new scenario tiles, new character tiles, but it also added a cooperative mode for each of these scenarios, right? Which then all of a sudden had you and other players going towards one common goal. You allied with one of the factions at the start, and then you kept it that way. And the other faction was your enemy.
It's the only way we play.
And it's the only way we play. So it changed. It basically made this game not even a consideration for the list, and actually brought it up to the number 5 list. Because once we played it with the expansion, it was like, wow, this is actually a really fun game.
Yeah.
It's long. Granted, it is a long game, but as a group, it can be a lot of fun. So, anything else you want to talk about with Fallout?
No, I really like this one, and it's like easy to set up and understand kind of what's going on and just jump right into it.
Yep.
Which, we're different types of gamers. Like I know Anthony's like a lot more into these kinds of like adventure-y type of games and stuff like that. I don't have as much experience with them.
Mainly
That's
mine.
why it's
mainly mine
his
list.
countdown.
Yeah.
But I particularly enjoy these where I don't feel like I have to worry about counting when we're like doing dice rolls for combat and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And it's easier to understand. You feel like you're there. I guess that's pretty much it. I just like the mechanics of it.
The key to this genre is how much do you feel immersed in the setting, right? Because that's, in my opinion, that is what really brings these games or elevates these games above the rest, right? Is that it's very narrative, but it's not sort of a scripted narrative in most cases. You're kind of creating that adventure, on a grander scale. And Fallout does a really good job of that. It really does bring you into the environment. You feel like you're in this irradiated wasteland. There's a lot of bad things going on, but you are able to explore. And when you explore these little quests and missions, they're really neat. Like they're really narrative, and they really kind of bring you into this scenario. And then it can come back in a later part where you're actually like, okay, if you visit this other location, you can do part 2 to this story, and it continues that, and they kind of branch off, which is really cool. Fallout definitely made our list.
For sure.
And and as she said, she never ever asks me to break out an adventure game. It's always, let's play this game, and of course it's a Euro. But there are times where I really want to play I don't want to think, I just want to experience a game for its narrative nature. And that's why this genre of games is more, I guess, more fitting to me.
Yeah.
Because I want to play these more. But then she'll play it with me because she'll play anything. And then
that was really fun.
At the end, she's like, that was a really fun game. But I have to kind of initiate this.
Yes.
Which is kind of why I'm sort of going to lead this list, because it is mainly my list, but I know she enjoys
I have
these
approved.
as well. Yes, she approved it. She gave me the seal of approval. That's why I'll do.
Yes.
That's why it's my order, my list. She's got her list coming up in a future video. So that's it. Enough about Fallout. That's Fallout, but I recommend you absolutely have to get the new California expansion with it for it to be cooperative. Yep. So
cool.
There you go. Let's move on to game number 4. All right, number 4, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. This is an interesting one because basically first of all, it's an app-driven game.
Right.
So there's people love and hate those. We are indifferent. I kind of enjoy it if it's done right. I think it's done mostly right in this one. Not quite at the level of Descent,
Yeah.
but it's mostly right. Now, the one caveat with this one, this is number 4, number 1 because I love the theme Lord of the Rings. Number 2, it is in fact a macro overland map game. The only caveat there is that it does have a tactical combat map for certain parts of scenarios and certain scenarios within the campaign, but it's not enough to just the whole game isn't that.
Right.
I think it definitely fits the category for me. You may not agree, and I'm okay with that. But for the most part, it is an overland adventure game, right? Now this one does not have so similar to Fallout, it does have tiles. So you are putting out land tiles. You are putting out your adventurers on the board. You're fighting orcs and goblins on the board and trolls and all that good stuff. Wolves and or wargs, as you would call them from Lord of the Rings. But the game itself is guided by the app.
Right.
Right. The app tracks sort of the Eye of Sauron's like the Doom track, where he's like sort of kind of pushing you forward, because the slower you go through these things in any of these games, especially Fantasy Flight games, they like to really nudge you along and be like, hey, you can't really take your time exploring this place. You need to keep going, because as the Doom ramps up, more and more monsters start to spawn, and all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming and you get overrun, right? So it is a campaign-driven, scenario by scenario. They've expanded the heck out of this series. Now, I'll be quite frank, I haven't expanded the heck out of this series because we just don't have time to play through through all of it.
Right.
Just because you obviously know we play a ton of games and there just isn't enough. I maybe when I retire, I think we'll probably look to really expand a lot of these and paint everything, because then I won't.
If you're not like fishing every day.
If I'm not fishing and golfing every day, yes, we'll definitely be painting and playing lots and lots of these epic scenarios. But every time I play this one, I'm like, why don't I play this more? Right? Because I really enjoy the nature of it, the card play in it, just managing your character, upgrading your character, going through the scenarios. It's just such a rich narrative experience. There's a lot of exploration, a lot of discovery, and again, the app it could be the only turnoff if you're not into that.
Yeah.
But if you're into Lord of the Rings, this will definitely give you sort of that bigger scale feeling without it being just, I'm in a dungeon fighting monsters all day.
Right. And you can play as the characters you know and love.
You can, especially if you buy the expansions, because there's a ton of them you can be. But the base does come with some really cool ones anyway. So all the basic main ones anyway. At least if you just want to be like Aragorn or
Bilbo Baggins,
Gimli, or I think Bilbo's in it. Yeah. So there you go. That's Lord of the Rings: Journeys to Middle Earth. I think we've covered this before. It makes a lot of our list because, quite frankly, it's just a really good game. And I do stand by this recommendation.
Cool. Me too.
That's number 4. Let's move on to number 3.
All right.
All right, game number 3.
Roombound.
Roombound. This is a fantasy adventure board game. I think that about says it. Says it all. That's all you need to know. No, Runebound. So Runebound is an older game, right? This thing has been out for a while. I'm not even sure if they're still printing this thing. I'll be honest with you.
Preparing for the list, and you're like, I don't even know if people can get this.
Yeah.
But if you can.
If you can, yeah. And this isn't about, we didn't say this is every game you can get your hands on. This is just every game in our collection that are in the top 5, right? So what is Runebound? Runebound is set in the world of Terranoth. So, and this is a great example of micro versus macro, right? Because the micro, the dungeon crawler, is Descent. That's Terranoth, right?
Right, yeah.
The Overland Adventure RPG board game is Runebound, right? Runebound suffered from the same thing that Fallout did. Not surprising, because it was published by Fantasy Flight Games, as was Lord of the Rings. So our top...
Because you're flying over the fantasy landscape.
I don't even know what this is.
Right?
Yeah, sure. So our top, think about that. Our 5, our 4, and our 3 in Overland Adventure board games are all published by the same publisher, Fantasy Flight. I think Fantasy Flight does an outstanding job of building these Overland narrative adventure games. And I wish they would keep doing it, or at least to keep with the secret sauce and keep doing it, like keep putting out more content. They just don't really expand on a lot of these, except Lord of the Rings, I guess, because it's an IP thing. But like Terranoth is like, that's their IP, man. Like, why aren't they really leaning in hard with something like Runebound, or do a new addition to something else? Because I think it definitely, it's underrated, and I don't think anybody really talks about this game.
That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about it, because I think it's one of those games that kind of shines in our collection that I always walk by the shelves and I'm like, man, I would love to break that out and play a scenario, right? So the original Runebound is that you're in Terranoth, you've got a board. This one's on an actual board, so you're not like flipping over tiles, and it does, so that doesn't change, right? The board is what the board is. But the locations all have different purposes depending on the scenario you're in. So you'll have monsters, certain types of monsters spawning at a certain locations. The boss will spawn at a certain location depending on which boss you're fighting that scenario. And in the standard game, it was about whoever like killed the boss. That was like the winner. But like similar to Fallout, they came out with an expansion called Unbreakable Bonds, right? Which added solo and cooperative, as well as added a few more characters and hero classes and stuff like that. So this is where the game really shined, because it creates sort of like this AI, to fighting. You go down your list of actions. Okay, if it's this, do this. If you roll this, or you draw these tokens out of bags, and it does this. Really, really cool way to sort of bring what was a competitive adventure, which is really tough to play.
I'm into the adventures when they're cooperative.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's more fun.
Yeah, I'm not at all into these types of games where you're really just kind of on your own, and then if you run into the other player, you fight them, like, or you're fighting them to get ahead of them, and it's like, adventures would probably be, if the world was being threatened by one big bad guy.
Yeah.
Like
even you're joining forces.
Even if you're enemies, I mean, look at Marvel, right? You had the Civil War, and then all of a sudden Thanos is here, and they're all together fighting for one cause, right? Like, it's
exactly,
you all come together and you fight the big baddie, right? So, to me, like, that's what really makes these games shine. So, Runebound is like your atypical role-playing game. You are a certain class. You could be like a fighter class, but you could branch off in two different, like, advanced classes, depending on which one you want, and then that'll hone your skills a certain way. You could be more fighter, you could be more healer, you could be whatever you want, right? You could be a rogue, you could be a ranger. I'm always the healer. You are the healer. I usually like to play like the wizard character. So, but you advance your skills, you level up, you get better skills, you do it. It plays, it has a lot of the same similar mechanics as you would find if you've played Descent before, but again, it's more zoomed out. So you're going to locations, you're exploring, you're finding monsters, you're beating them up on the map. Like, there's no, like, you're not loading monster miniatures onto the map in this one. I think the only miniatures are your heroes in this game. So it's like similar to some of the other games that we'll cover as well. You don't have monster heroes. Maybe they're like little chips, or they're cards. In this case, I think they're cards where you draw the cards out and it's got all their stats on it. And what you have to do, plus the rewards, you keep them as trophies, and you do other stuff, like you buy new gear from shops, locations. It's got everything you want in an adventure game. It's just, I don't know if you could get it. Like, that's the only drawback. I don't know if you can get this one.
I would say what I like about actually like a lot of these is that with a lot of those, like a lot of campaign adventures, you kind of start small and you're building your character over many, 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 many sessions. Yeah. And what I like about these, especially for like a date night, or just like for us, we pull it out, we get maybe one scenario's worth. But by the end of the scenario, you do feel like you've built yourself up enough to where you're like, my character's pretty cool.
Yep.
And we're having fun with it.
So for like Lord of the Rings, that when you're building your character up over a campaign.
Yeah.
For Fallout and Runebound, they start and stop with that one campaign.
Right.
When it's over, it's over.
That's scenario.
Yep. I'd call it there's no campaign.
Right.
It's just, here's your scenario, play it. And once you beat it or you lose, you don't carry anything over to the next game. So they're just one and dones, which is good for that one night, because you're going to take it out, you're going to play your scenario, you're going to win or lose, and you're going to put it away. So this one is definitely high on my list, just because it's a beautiful game, it's immersive, there's a lot of great narrative here, and it's Fantasy Flight quality, which I'm a big fan of.
Cool.
All right, that's it. That is Runebound. If you can get it, I say look into it, because it's worth having. If you're into Overland Adventures, you probably already know about it, but if not, I would check it out. On to number 2.
All right.
Game number 2. All right, game number 2, Gloom of Guilforth.
I love this game.
Yeah,
so
this
much.
one is.
Love it.
Yeah, so out of the games, this is probably your favorite.
This is my favorite.
This is
I
her
wanted
number
this
one.
one to be number one.
It's not quite my number one, but it's her number one.
that's
so
okay.
Gloom of Guilforth. So this one is a card game, actually,
Yeah.
believe it or not. 100% cards. It does have a few little chits, but there's no board, there's no tiles really.
Yeah. Like your map is like abstract-y kind of the cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all cards. The whole map is cards, right? And it is a cooperative or a competitive game, but it's like, I would say semi-co-op in that aspect.
Yeah.
But it's still, you're both trying to get towards a goal, and you each have your own sort of
Yes.
goals in this game, which is really unique. So this is basically, it's not a one continuous map where you can go from, you follow a path through mountains, through a forest, and all that
Right.
stuff. It's basically like, here's location 1, here's location 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a grid, right, of locations. But you go orthogonally to each location. So it sort of fit that mold of Overland Adventure, because you're kind of zoomed
Yes.
out at the location. You go to that location, you encounter something. It could be a creature, it could be something else.
Could be something you're looking for.
Could be something you're looking for, and this game is driven by keywords. Like, so you're
Yes.
looking for certain keywords at certain locations. You're trying to find those things to help you get through your own personal quests. Right? You have
Right.
your own personal quests. There's multiple levels of that as you'll go through. But while you're exploring and traveling, you'll be leveling your character up, getting stronger, getting better skills, building out sort of like your party of allies you can have. And they'll all do, like, they have special abilities, and they help you fight, because the fighting in this game is really hard.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is about the fighting, and a lot of it is about the discovery. And it's so unique. And what sets this game apart from all others, and I mean all others, this is hands down, in my opinion,
Yes.
arguably one of the best looking card games,
Yeah.
period.
The art is beautiful.
It is
like
beyond
I
beautiful.
would make posters
Yeah.
of this art and put it all over.
If these
the
characters
game
are
Yeah.
100% hand-drawn or drawn on a computer, I don't even care.
know,
If they're
yeah.
not actual, like, pictures taken of actual photographs, because the art is almost photorealistic,
Yeah, it's
fantasy art,
really,
that is
really
just
cool.
beyond the
Yeah.
level of what I'm used to seeing
Yeah.
in game art. It is actual art on these
It is.
cards.
Yeah. It's like it like the characters like glow.
Yeah.
Like it's gorgeous.
They look like real people. So
Yeah.
I don't even know, but it's not like, they don't look like fake real people, as in like, hey, we took a photo of somebody
Well, yeah, exactly.
and changed
Right.
it to look like a drawing.
Yeah.
These
It looks like you're watching a fantasy movie.
yeah, it's really crazy. I'm
people in
telling you.
costume and
You'll
all
see
that
on the
stuff.
images we're putting
Yeah.
up on the screen, because it's just kind
Absolutely
of
gorgeous.
ridiculous how
Yeah.
good the art is on this game. And if you haven't seen the art of this game, like, I would like a graphic novel or graphic art book
Yeah, yeah.
of just images of this game.
That'd be so cool.
I would pay
Yeah.
for that, because it's so stinking beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
this is the first one that came out. I also have something called Pimp Your Gloom, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, like, the game has like regular sized playing cards that you would use as your map. So they were kind of small, and you're laying your other
Yeah.
cards on them, and you're putting your, like, little character guy on there. But the Pimp Your Gloom actually gives you, like, bigger, almost like tarot-sized
Tarot
cards
size,
for the
yeah.
locations, and it really gives it a better table presence and gives
Yeah.
you a lot more room. And as you go through every round of the game, one of these locations is going to flip over to the gloom side. It gets
It's like
really,
the blight.
yeah, it gets like
blighted.
blighted, and there's like penalties for staying in that location overnight and stuff like that. But it's just
That's the part that I
really-
like about it,
yeah.
though, because even though it's not on a map, you know, and you would think, like, how are you going to immerse yourself in this environment? It's like you have your quest, you know what you're going for, and as you're going through overnight, there's like things that you have to do, and like you said, if you stay in like a blighted area, you can do that, but then there's a cost to it. You might want to, because you're right next to a land that you know you need to go to in order to get something that you need. So a lot of cool decisions
Yep.
in this one as you're going through. That's more than just following people around on a map, seeing monsters and going to fight them. It's really just like, I need something from here, which is what I would feel like if I was in a real quest. I'd be like, I have to go to this forest.
Right.
I don't know what I'm going to encounter in there. I've got no clues, but I'm just going to go in and see what happens.
Yep.
And that's this game.
No, yeah, it's
so cool.
really cool. And the way they manage your health is if you get like 3 actions if you have 3 hearts of
Yes,
health, and as
right.
you lose hearts, you lose actions, so you become
Yeah.
weaker, which is pretty neat because you don't have the strength to carry
Yeah.
on as many actions that turn.
And then, but you're also you also have benefits. Like I think as you level up your character, and there's the different land types you might have a synergy with those land types.
Depending, yeah.
So depending on how your character is set up. So if you were to stay, let's say you stay in a forest location, like maybe you're exempt from, something bad that's happening there or whatever.
Yeah,
so
because there's so many different
ways to like mitigate
characters,
what's happening.
character classes.
Yeah.
There's like it's just so many different ways you can build your character in
Right.
this game, and to get all different benefits and depending on it to suit the way you and the style you want to play the game.
Right.
It's just it's really
cool.
a well done
It
game.
is difficult too. I will
It's
say,
tough.
like you said the fighting is hard or the combat is hard. It's not mechanically difficult, but these monsters are hard to fight.
You roll dice, and it's
and
challenging.
we've had several games where like we've lost to the blight.
Oh yeah,
basically.
You can lose this game pretty easily. It can be pretty punishing, but it's
But it's
it's
not
enjoyable.
in a bad way. It's
yeah.
so much fun.
I think there's a newer one called Shadows of Kilforth. Equally as beautiful that we don't have, but I think it plays very similar, just in a different setting.
Right.
So that's also one you could look into. But yeah, Gloom of Kilforth is definitely
very good.
high on our list of games. Surprised the heck out of us when we first played it. How enjoyable it was. You almost write your own story in this game.
You do. It's so
which
cool.
is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's number 2, Gloom of Kilforth. Let's go to the number 1 game in our collection. All right, number 1 game.
Of all time.
Surprise, it's Mage Knight. Now, you probably like, man, he said the number 1 game in his collection. Was that a slip? Actually was not a slip. This is my number 1 game.
I actually said that.
Yeah, she asked me that too after that. She said,
Number
wait,
one
did you
game?
really mean
That's
that?
a
I said,
bold statement.
I said, this is my number 1 game.
That's my favorite.
Hands down. Like, if I had to just play 1 game, I would play Mage Knight. Why? Because I could play it with just me. Or I could play it with 2 of us or 3 of us or whatever. And I would still enjoy it.
Up to 4 of us.
Up to 4 of us. I would enjoy the heck out of it. Why? This is known as like one of the best solo games out there, and I think anybody who solos board games knows about Mage Knight, and they've all played Mage Knight and they all love Mage Knight. It is the king of Overland adventure role-playing games.
Hands
No
down.
argument. This isn't even like my opinion. This is
Well,
just,
tell us why.
I'm just stating
In case you
fact
haven't
here.
played
Like
Mage
we're
Knight.
talking fact here. So Mage Knight is you are a Mage Knight. You're on a location. You start out at this portal, and you come into this land, and you've got a mission, right? You've got to take down these castles. Quite simple. And there's a lot of different scenarios that will challenge you. But the basic scenario is like you just come into this land. You've got these overland tiles. They have different locations. They've got roaming monsters. They have places to explore. They've got mage towers. They've got keeps. You can go and you can befriend them. You can attack them. Like you just have freedom to do whatever you want, however you want to do it in this game, while you explore the landscape to try to find these castles to kill all the monsters within them and take them over.
Right.
Sounds simple, but it's not. You will level. You will find the fighting is extremely challenging, and the whole beauty of this game isn't that you're just moving across the land and rolling dice and fighting things. You have a deck of cards, and your deck of cards, for the most part, is the same across all of the characters. This is a deck builder, believe it or not. It has deck building mechanics. You're basically building a deck, and you have the same cards as most of the other characters, except your character may have 1 or 2. I think it has 2 unique cards to them that are just a little bit more powerful versions of other cards. And you can use your cards you have to use them to move. You have to use them to attack. You have to use them to recruit other troops into your little army. As you're weak and low level, you can only control like 1 troop. But as you level up, you'll eventually be able to control 2, I think up to 3 at a certain point to help you fight. You have a unique dice system that is used for generating like different color mana in the game that you're going to use to spend to power up your abilities. You've got spells, so you can buy spells. It's just there's so many ways you can build your character in this game. Plus, your character has unique actual skills. That some are like passive, some are like you can use them every round, and they you use it one time and then it happens, and then it can add like additional attack to a thing. It can use additional shields. It depends on your character. They're all different. But it really, and I don't think she's never played Mage Knight with me, so.
But
Let's not go there yet.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, I don't want to go there yet. So she's not played Mage Knight, which is why I'm doing all the talking here.
Yes.
Because I know Mage Knight, right? In and out. I've played this game. This is back in the days where I used to solo game. Like this was...
This is glory days.
Those were the good old days, let me tell you. Like so, that was the game. Like that you would bring out... I would have it on my table all the time because you would just be neck deep into these scenarios where you're just trying to survive, right? And trying to optimize. And the trick is, how well can I optimize this next turn based on the cards I just drew? Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of this game. That's the puzzle, right? And that's why it's so good. And adding new, better cards and artifacts and all that stuff to your deck, and it's like, wow, man, you start to become really powerful. You start to have a larger hand limit. You start to be able to play more cards, and you're going to need every one of those cards as you get to the higher level monsters because they have such resistance to certain types of magic. They have resistance to physical attacks. So it starts to get really crazy mathy when you start to try to figure out, and that's the challenge of this game, is when you try to figure out if you have enough damage to mitigate all of their defenses and kill them, right?
But probably so exciting when you realize that you
It is, because you're like, oh, I know what I can do. I can flip this guy and turn this out and tap this dude and do all these other things, and I can finally kill this dude, right? It gets that crazy and that rewarding, because when you solve that puzzle, that's the beauty of Mage Knight.
I love seeing you get so excited.
It is one of the best games. Yeah. It is. It is great. Now, the art's nice on it. I don't think it's gorgeous art. I think it's good. Like, I would say the art's really good. It serves its purpose. I have all the expansions for this. So there's like a gazillion different types of scenarios. Really cool. Now, what you were alluding to is you played another game with me.
Yes, I did.
And I'll share this with all of you. So Mage Knight is fantasy themed, like hardcore fantasy themed. That's what it is. There's another game by the same designer, same publisher, called Star Trek Frontiers. And Star Trek Frontiers, for all intents and purposes,
exactly the same game.
Is Mage Knight in space, themed as Star Trek. It's equally as fun, without a doubt, because it is exactly the same. Like, it is exactly the same. Except you're playing as a Star Trek commander or captain, as opposed to just a Mage Knight, right? The only thing I do not like about this game is that it uses stock photos from the shows. And you've heard me say this before in the past, and that is just one of my biggest pet peeves. I wish it had regular art as opposed to that, but I could live with it. So you played this with me.
Yes.
And what did you think?
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah. And I don't have the same issue with stock photos as you do.
Yeah, I have issues with that. But so she played it. She loved the mechanics. And I was like, okay, wow, if you like the Star Trek one, you'll love the Mage Knight one, because it's the same thing. It's just a different theme.
Right. We just haven't had a chance to play it.
We just haven't played that one
Get it out
together.
And play it,
but yeah. So that's Star Trek Frontier. So
yeah, really
look,
good.
If you only had one adventure RPG game to buy, my recommendation would be Mage Knight.
And my recommendation would be Gloom of Kilforth.
Gloom of Kilforth, see that? So you have a lot of options. At least we showed you 6 options today.
Yes.
If this is sort of your thing, or you're looking to expand into this sort of genre because you just want to branch out and try something new.
Yeah, and I would say, I would absolutely. If you are like you and your partner, gaming partner, whatever person in your house you usually play, and any other kind of style games, and you haven't tried adventure games, maybe I know, like, for me, kind of seems like daunting, especially, again, the campaigns and stuff can seem a little like, do I want to get into that, or I don't really want to name a town, like, that makes me anxious. These are all really good options that give you, especially in a cooperative environment, that give you that, like, kind of, you're connected for that couple of hours, you're going through an adventure, you're going through something, that's more than just like watching a movie together, you're actually, like, it feels like you've done this, like, exploration.
It's like experiencing a cool 2-hour movie.
It is, but
together.
It's even more than that, I think, because like with the movie or something, it's so passive, which is also fun. You're experiencing it together, but it's like you're actually doing this thing. Like you're like defeating these monsters and you're exploring stuff and you're celebrating each other's victories.
Yep.
And in that aspect, I think that, that's what makes it a lot of fun for us.
Yeah. And even if you get to the end and you lose, it's still, you had a fun time getting there.
It's a fun journey.
I've lost Mage Knight countless times. Like, I think I've only won like once or twice, honestly, and I've played it dozens of times. And it's just a matter of like, okay, I'll pack it up, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
I had a few good moments, but then I just got crushed because it's tough. And now, word of warning with Mage Knight, if you have an older version of it, or you pick up an older version of it, the original rulebook is horrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's so confusing. It's so poorly written. I just got to be truthful here. There's been a new reprint. There's a new all-in version, like the Ultimate Edition that comes with like all the expansions and a better rulebook. So
you just recommend getting that
I'd recommend just get that one if you don't have it. Like that's the way I'd go. I'd love to probably cash mine in and get the new one just to have all the new stuff. But at the end, because there was one of the expansions that came out where the tiles were actually different sizes than the original base ones. So it's kind of weird. Yeah. But it's not big enough difference for me to care. But in any case, I have like a broken token insert, so I'm all in. So I'm not getting rid of it. But in any case, I definitely recommend Mage Knight. Check it out. And that wraps up our entire collection of Overland Adventure RPGs. Yeah.
Adventure board games.
Adventure board games. So, hey, look, we hope you enjoyed the list. We've got plenty more to come. We love sharing our collection with you. We love talking about how we rate certain games in our collections and which ones are the top tier of certain genres. And I think it just gives you a little bit of insight on what we like to play.
Yeah, and we like to hear your thoughts too. So our last list, a lot of you put a lot of really good recommendations in the comments. So please let us know.
Yeah,
what you
we ended
think
up buying some of those recommendations.
We did, yes, we did, which we'll have to share with you another time.
Yeah.
So.
And I'd love to see your recommendations for games that you love that are Overland Adventure RPGs as we define
them, yes.
As we define it, because I would love to find and discover new ones that I may not have thought,
we're always looking for these. Yeah. And you're right that there's not...
It's hard
It's just not I don't want to say a mechanic, but it's not a style that is like in trend, I guess, right now.
I don't know. Or maybe we just don't know, right? We just haven't been paying attention. Like, we don't heavily follow all the Kickstarter releases. That's just true. The truth, right? So we're more of the publisher release at the local game store type.
Going to the game store is an Overland adventure.
It's for us. Yeah, we spend like too much time there because we look at every single game on the shelf and really question what games would fit our collection. We're very, very particular about what games we want to buy. So if you have suggestions for games that are Overland Adventure RPGs, as we just find it, love to see them in the recommendation in the comments below.
Awesome.
So that about wraps it up. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you.